Oh my God, I'm back. How did that happen? So, what we're going to do is pull a tarot card for the day. Let's see where we're at. Let's see what's going on. I like to use animal cards because they are so natural. Their metaphors are big. Their stories I can understand. For me, I felt like I had to live in the woods. You know, I've always been someone who was really stressed out. Honestly, I was. I was always somebody, my husband's known me since I was 20. We've been dating since I was 20 and I'm 48. So that means that he's known me a really long time. And when he knew me, I was very high strung. I was bouncing all over the place. When I was a kid, I was known as Rita the rabbit, ricochet rabbit, you know, bing, 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 ricochet rabbit, because I was all over the place, you know, and I couldn't focus and I couldn't get my head clear. And it was mainly because of the trauma that I'd had in my life and the stress that I was under, you know, just the situational. And so one of the things that helps everybody calm down and stay more level is nature. And so I felt drawn to needing to work someplace that was natural. And so I ran a nature center for about 10 years. I taught outdoor environmental education. And then I went back and I got my master's degree in recreation administration. And then I ran a nature center and I managed natural areas for 7.5 years, I think. And then after that is when I shifted, I went even deeper, and that's when I went into healing work. And this was quite a while ago. And so I felt I compelled to work in places that had nature, to live in places that had nature. I live on 2.5 acres of woods, and I feel like I have to. Oh, I forgot. I should pull us up on Facebook so I can follow us. One moment. Make sure nobody needs anything. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. And let's make sure. Haha. Here I am. And here you are. I'm glad everybody's here. Very cool. Okay. So I felt like I had to live in nature. I felt like I had to, otherwise I would go nuts. And I even have flocks of turkeys that come, and I married somebody who, you know, comes from Iowa and lives in the land. And, you know, so this was important to me. And because it was important to me, I like animal cards best because it fits with me. It resonates with me. Now, I've collected all sorts of tarot cards. Have you looked at the artwork on those things? They're beautiful. They're magnificent. You can collect tarot cards or oracle cards from all over the world. And they're so meaningful. But the ones that I use, as you can see, I mean, they're worn, they're tattered. The book that I use is worn and tattered. It's animal speak, and it's the Jamie Sams animal cards. And I have found more than anything that when I have a question I need to answer, I go to nature and I solve it that way. So today's going to be all about family. Let's see what we're supposed to, the direction the day will go. Awesome. So we got deer. Let me tell you a little bit about deer so that you know what to expect today too, not just me. Okay. Almost there. Gentleness and innocence. Gentle luring to new adventure. The deer leads us back to the primal wisdom of older teachings. It reminds us to establish a strong, healthy connection with the child before we expose it to many people and other strange energies. It's time to be gentle with yourself and others. A new innocence and freshness is about to be awakened or born. There's going to be a gentle, enticing lure of new adventures. Are you being too critical and uncaring of yourself? Are you trying to force things? These are some important questions. And when a deer shows up, there's an opportunity to express gentle love that will open new doors to adventure for you. Yeah, I totally agree. So one of the reasons I dress today in very casual and comfort is because when we talk about family, we really need to talk about it gently. We need to talk about it with sincerity and care and softness. And we need to look at the stories of the people that came before us and find some peace with it. If you think about it, you are the latest evolution, the latest iteration, the latest generation of your family line. And traumas and stories have been passed down, since the first human. You carry those stories. They found that trauma, after the Holocaust, they found that trauma leaves markers on the DNA, which then are passed down generation to generation. So the Holocaust is still affecting family members and the children and all of those who ended up blood related who were born after that time, because they're markers on the DNA. Choices your family made to immigrate or to marry someone or to stand up for themselves, those choices have been one long path. And you're a part of that path. You're part of that whole lineage that comes before you. Now, that's not all you're connected to, of course. Hi, Jessica. Nice to see you. That's not the only path you're on. That's not the only story or line that you have. Like me, I'm also related to all the healers and all of the teachers that have ever existed. And I'm also related to all other women who have ever been here. So we have, different families or tribes, but the blood family that comes down through the body, it leaves its mark. Some of the most difficult triggers that we have are the ones that we don't know why we have them. Sure, okay, sometimes in your childhood, maybe you had some traumas happen and you blocked them off behind a wall to protect yourself. And when you did, you forgot about it for a while. But eventually, when something big happens or when you're old enough, the memories are able to come up. Like Vietnam War veterans, many of them really didn't start having some of their worst flashbacks until they were in their 40s, until they knew and felt that they were in a safe place. And so that's when it came up, when they were past some of the drama of their lives. And so what you're going through right now and the world is going through right now are the repercussions of everything that's come before us, both good and bad. And there are physical markers on the body that keep you trapped. They keep you trapped in the ideas and the thoughts and the beliefs that have that used to work or were needed or necessary at the time. Oh, good. You're anticipating a lot of connection with today's topic. Yes, Jessica. Yeah, I hope so. I hope you are. So it's the markers on our body were there to keep us safe, but we're in a way different place than we were 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. We're in a way different place, and we finally have the knowledge and the wisdom on how to reverse these things. One of the reasons I was attracted to shamanic work, and I studied shamanic work for about 10 years, was the nature element, that we were talking about before. Nature keeps you centered and calm and level, but also a lot of the healing traditions, because they were traditions that were designed to do the same thing that we do with havening, except it took a lot longer. The same thing that we do with the TAT points or when we get together for an hour at night, it's the same. It's a version of the sweat lodge. It's a version of a talking circle. It's a version of all of the ceremonies and rituals that came, because they were designed to support the body in healing itself. by getting rid of the past and de-stressing it and detoxing it out of the system and processing through our emotions on a regular basis. Now, it was really, a pain in the butt to drive to Michigan. It took me 5.5 hours. Maybe they wanted me, maybe they didn't. Who would be there? Oh, okay, we're going to do a sweat lodge. Now we have to build it. Now we have to set it up. Now we have to pray. Now we have to fast. Now we have to, make food for the thing afterwards. To have a healing that we do when we haven, those healings would take weeks, months, years to prepare. And we're doing it with all of these tools. So they didn't know this stuff before. They didn't know how to do it. The ideas were passed down, but the technologies weren't. These are like your iPhone. These things that you're learning are like your iPhone. They're that cool and cutting edge. And some have been around, for thousands of years, but they were like hidden in Japan with some secret family that didn't tell anybody. It didn't really get out. They didn't really make the connection. So you have the opportunity to heal not just yourself, not just the family that you live in, and the people who surround you, but the trauma that's dogged your family since maybe 500 years ago. I had a real wake-up call when my cousin came down with breast cancer, got breast cancer. And my dad's side of the family had never been close. We hadn't, because we'd all had trauma running around. We were all dysfunctional. We were all nuts. We were, there was too much going on. We're all stressed out. So we were never close, and they lived a few hours away and near my grandmother, and my parents had, decided to move further. So when my cousin came down with breast cancer and I was a healer, I felt it called to go and help her through this process, through this dying process that she was going through. Because what had happened was she had gotten a lesion and tried to heal it herself, and it kept getting worse, and hiding it from people and not letting anybody know and not getting any help and trying to get her body to heal without being vulnerable and opening up until it got so bad that they put her in hospice. And when she was in hospice, it was actually probably the most peaceful, and she said it was, the most peaceful, beautiful experience she ever had in her life. And the reason was because her mother had helped find a hospice that was, in gardens and was loving and compassionate. And she was just in her early 50s. So I would go, and I got to talk to my cousin, and I'd visit her in hospice, and she was surrounded, by this beautiful view and nice people, and no one was yelling, and she didn't have to be afraid. It was beautiful. And we would talk, and she would tell me about the rest of my family. And she'd tell me about what had happened, because I didn't know, because we weren't close with them. And I found out that every female cousin who was on my dad's side of my generation had had some sort of sexual violence happen to them. Oh, I understand, Kitty. My brother, when he was young, a year old, was needed to be put into a nursing home. And the situation there was beyond heartbreaking. And then he died at the age of 13 because we finally were able to get him into a different home, and they cut down his meds enough, but his heart couldn't take it, and he had a heart attack and he passed. And so, yes, you have to be smart and intuitive and be prepared for things like that. Hey, Laura, nice to see you. And Doreen's here too. Awesome. But my cousin was lucky enough to be in a space that that was known to be one of the better ones in the Milwaukee area. It's okay, Dina. It's no big deal. I mean, it's a big deal, but I've unpacked a lot of this stuff, so it's okay. So I talked to her and find out that all my female cousins had had some sort of sexual violence happen to them when they were children, you know, or adolescents or early young adults. And it was a light bulb went off in my head. I said, this stuff didn't just happen to me. This happened to every female on my father's side of my generation. This was passed down. Something that we knew, something that we believed, some way that we moved, put a target on our back, put a target on our head. And it made me say, I've got to take a look at this. Why did this happen? So, you know, looking at the beliefs and the ideas that inform our choices or cause our body to react or cause us to not go down a path because we have some anxiety and fear around it. And as you know by now, that stuff's, it's just tension on your system. It's just a bookmark in your brain, and it's time to clear it out. So when I realized that a lot of the problems in my family weren't because they were bad people or good people, didn't have anything to do with, you know, my dad or my mom, or that it was a story that was being played out. And they didn't know that they were in a story. They didn't know that they were reliving or seeing or reacting to things that had happened hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. Markers that were passed down. Their past trauma kept getting passed down, family to family to family. And this is how we break it. And a lot of people this year, because of everything that's going up, because where we're at this tipping point and how we understand the body and mind working, they're working on all of this past generational stuff, because we need to stop reacting the way that we've been reacting. We need to stop making the choices we've been making, because look what happened. You know, look where we're at. Look what's going on. We have got to make different choices. And so we're all culpable. We're all part of it. So after that, especially because we're interconnected energetically, so we all affect the field. We all affect each other. I mean, maybe I'm not affecting the larger mass, but me with other like minds, we're affecting the larger mass. It's like there's science behind it. There's studies in Washington, D.C. It's cool, crazy stuff. So right now, what we all need to be doing is exactly what we're doing. Loving on each other, meditating with each other, holding this healthy, safe space. And we're like, you know, have you ever gotten solar panels? And the idea behind solar panels is that your energy that you create from your solar panels gets hooked into ComEd. And if you make, then you get back from ComEd, the electrical company around here, you get back from them the amount of energy you put in. And if you need more, then you pay them. And if you need less, then they pay you. So you're feeding into a whole structure, into a whole system, into a whole grid. And when we do this meditation stuff, when we work together, when we love, when we experience new thoughts, when we get the trauma off of our system, we are hooking into this grid and helping bring everybody else down. Because there's literally radio waves going from me to you, literally. And so when we're doing this, it helps bring everybody back into balance. It helps bring everybody back into center. That's what we need to be doing right now, is exactly what you are doing, which is healing. So Jessica says, saying that when we take the time and effort to clear our triggers, it's also potentially, yes, exactly. It's not only potentially, it's clearing generations long traumas. Yes. So the science is, right, when you have a trauma, your body puts a trigger in your brain that this is dangerous, And until you do a sweat lodge or haven or take a nap or take a bath and around that specific issue, when you do this, then it sends calcium through the trigger that's been passed down family member to family member sometimes, or the DNA that's been passed down family member. We're changing that. We are physically changing the bookmarks that have been left behind by all of our blood relatives before us. So just because, 3 generations ago somebody had an alcoholic tendency does not mean that we can't break that pattern. That's what we're doing. We're breaking the pattern. Now with the DNA, this is cool enough. With the DNA, when there's trauma in the DNA, it flips switches in the DNA. And the DNA can be flipped on or it can be flipped off, okay? And when you have positive emotions and positive things, then the stuff that's good gets flipped on and the stuff that's bad gets flipped off. If you have a lot of toxic in your body, if you're sick, if you're emotionally sick, if stuff like that goes on, then it switches on disease and it switches off the good stuff. So positive things keep you healthy and switch off disease, and a lot of toxic stuff in your body turns off the good stuff and turns on the disease. So by healing this and getting the stress off your system and the triggers out of your brain, it flips the DNA, it flips the switch on the DNA to keep the disease in check and to have the positive stuff come up. They did this work on twins a long time ago, and they wanted to know if twins who were separated at birth, if they came out exactly the same way, what happened? And they found that, let's say at birth, one was adopted by a family that knew how to regulate their emotions, and one was adopted by a family who didn't know how to regulate their emotions. Some ended up with, the ones who didn't regulate, they ended up with diseases, and the ones that did regulate, they didn't end up with the same diseases because the DNA was flipped on or off. And then this pattern can be passed down. So one twin was able to flip it to happy, healthy, and the other twin was not able to because they had a more dysregulated family system. So yes, you are literally changing the direction of your family. It's really, really neat. So when I looked at my cousin, and she was dying because she didn't get help, and she didn't get help because she was taught that she had to handle everything herself, and she was scared of doctors, and she didn't want to deal with any of that. She had all of these fears and anxieties which were passed down. She died from breast cancer in her early 50s unnecessarily because of her beliefs, because of the emotional toxicity that she was carrying around, and also because she didn't get help because she believed she had to do everything on her own. That's how we get sick, is we physically get sick and then we don't get help. You can shortcut this. You can change the pattern. So I started to do all my healing work on me, right? I started to do that clearing and that regulation work on me. And I wanted to have a family. I didn't want to have a family that was dysregulated. I wanted to have a family that was close. So it started by me clearing myself up so that when we got together for Christmas or Easter, because those were the only times we'd get together, pretty much, holidays. And then we'd stay for a few hours, everybody would be uncomfortable, and they'd go home. That's the way that it was. We all kind of tolerated it, tried not to get mad at each other, tried not to get too stressed. It wasn't those happy Christmas family things. It was, we're getting together, there's a lot of tension, nobody knows what to do, and so we'll just cross our fingers and hope that, we all get out of this and nobody has to drink too much. So that was, that was the idea. And I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want a family that was disjointed. I wanted to be close. And so after I worked on my healing work around family, I could show up to my family and have compassion. And what happened is I started to change the energy of our gatherings. I didn't want to at first, not at all. I had a friend of mine who said, make your family feel, especially your dad, because the biggest challenge was my dad, make him feel like an honored guest in your home and see how that works. And I didn't want to. I was like, why would they deserve it? Why would my dad deserve it? Because he's been, toxic all of these years and angry and stressed. And, if he can't come and be in a good mood on the holiday, why should I treat him like an honored guest in my home? But I trusted this advice. I trusted this coaching that I got. And so I did special things for my dad to make him feel like a guest in my home. And because I did that, he calmed down. And because he calmed down, he wasn't so tense and agitated. And because he wasn't so tense and agitated, all of us empaths in the room weren't so tense or agitated either. And so the first time I did that, it turned out okay. I was so excited. It's like, okay, this turned out okay. So I said, I'm going to try it again. So I did. I tried it again. I got my dad some shrimp cocktail just for him. I went through some extra special effort. I was so glad that he was there. I greeted him. I made sure he had what he wanted to drink. I made him feel like an honored guest. And he started to realize that he could relax and he could calm down. And so when he relaxed and calmed down, then the empaths in the room relaxed and calmed down, and it was okay. So I did that for a few holidays, and I saw that we were starting to have better conversations. We were starting to get warmer together. We were starting to be more tolerant, more engaging, more relaxed. And every time we would get together, I'd make sure that I was in a good space, literally, actually, realistically. Like how you feel after a good, long self-healing session. I made sure that I was in a good space so I could welcome everyone into my home genuinely and create an atmosphere and an environment where they could relax and enjoy themselves. Not only that, but if the situation called for, I could set lines. I could be firm because we were more relaxed with each other. So there wasn't as much drama around it. I could be direct. And because of that, we started to get some intimacy in my family and some closeness, which was really important because my dad got sick this last year in the middle of COVID, not with COVID, but he got sick last year. And he had cancer and had to have part of his colon removed. And then there was problem after problem after problem after problem after problem. And my sister and I, who had been regularly getting together with my family every week or every other week, because I'd started doing breakfasts with them. I started saying, you know what, I need to get closer to my family and get to know my family better. And so every Sunday I'd drive an hour and have breakfast with my family, but it allowed us to start having that closeness. So when my dad got sick, we'd already started this getting together and supporting each other. And so my sister and I had better communication. We could come in and really help my mom and my dad through this and be a support and be a love and bring all of our healing energies and help my dad through the most difficult part of his healing process. He's, of course, still healing, but the most difficult part has been, kind of passed on. We're through the most difficult part. And so actually the Alzheimer's thing that Dr. Love was talking about on Wednesday, that gave me dreams and nightmares that night. Like at 2 a.m. I woke up anxious. And so I havened and I cleared it and I got it out of my system. Don't sit there and suffer with it if you wake up at 2 a.m. Do your heart exercise, get up, do a timeline, do the TAT points. And if you can't get out of bed, just imagine that you're doing them, okay? Just imagine that you're doing them, because if you do it enough times, your body remembers. It responds as if you're doing it. So I can lay in bed and do TAT and havening without ever moving a muscle, because I'm being present with it, and in my mind, in my body, I'm feeling as if I'm doing it. So you don't even have to move once it's kind of in your muscle memory. And so that means you really can do it anywhere because you don't have to do nothing. It's great. But when it comes up, we need to clear it out. And so things are probably going to be coming up for you over the next 24 to 48 hours about the stuff that we talk about, because it's sensitive, it's personal. There'll be a part of you that says, that could never work for my family, or I tried that and they could never do that, or they're just so angry, or they just make me so mad, or they're just toxic. I want nothing to do with them. The only thing you need to do, I'm not telling you to get together with your family. I'm not telling you to call them. I'm not telling you to make an effort. I'm not telling you to do any of that. All I'm saying is when you have an emotion come up, like with Kitty, your grandma's, with dementia at home, getting vaccinated, it's really bothering you. Haven around it. In fact, let's just do this together. Everybody who's on the call, me included, let's just haven right now. Okay? I'll start. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now, if you're still feeling a little bit triggered or a little bit anxious, do one of the other tools and then share it. Share what's going on in your world in the comment section, because we're all really here to support each other. None of us are nasty. We're not going to attack anybody. We all totally know what it's like. Okay. And so share. And yes, yesterday, Julie was on a separate page when we worked with Julie, but today, this is all private. You can post whatever you want. This is a private group, and you can be vulnerable and you can share. So that's where the healing comes from, is when I say something and it gets you excited, either good or bad, that's your flag. That's your cue that says we need to calm ourselves down. What should we do? What tool do we want to use? And I'll typically use 3 or 4, one right after the other. I'll do havening, then TAT, then havening, then the timeline, and then maybe havening, and then maybe the pointy thingy where I turn around 3.5 times. So I'll do a few different ones, layering. Because what happens when you do this is it sends the calcium through the trigger in your brain. It starts to loosen the trigger, may take a few times until it gets fully absorbed. It starts to repattern the connections in your brain. It starts to get things flowing in your immune system. It gets your heart regulated, and it gets the stress out of your brain. So stress in your brain creates walls, literal physical walls of stress. And these walls of stress build up like the layers when you look at geology. And you can see the different layers in there from different, it used to be a river, and then it turned into a desert, and then it was an ocean. You're the same way. So you've got these layers of stress, one built up upon the other, built upon the other, built upon the other, built upon the other, which can go back, once again, generations. So you've got these walls of stress that make you feel fragmented and discombobulated, and your brain doesn't really communicate very well, and your heart's not regulated, and you feel anxious and sick and depressed and tired and all this other stuff. When we do this literally takes the chemicals out of our brain and stresses and detoxes it out of our system. So you may cry, you may sweat, your pee may change, your digestion may get better. You may have some sort of, diarrhea or the other way. I mean, you're having a detox, a literal physical detox in your body when you do this. So you may shake, you may have gas, You may yawn, your shoulders may relax, especially around family. So here's a tip. When you use these tools and you're in the middle of a family gathering or middle of a fight or in the middle of anything, find an excuse to go to the bathroom, to open up the refrigerator door, to go into the garage, to walk down the hall, and do any of these tools and do them. And what may happen in the moment, give yourself a little bit of space, is you may cry, you may shake, you may have that, but it'll be off your system. It'll be moved off your system. And you will be lighter, more whole, and more integrated and calmer and better able to handle the situation because you're not triggered anymore. You're back into balance. So find a reason to do it. But those big dramatic ones, those big ones, have the most powerful effects. Okay, so there's a question. So, all right. You want to know, how do we do this while we're in it? Okay. First of all, you have to recognize that these things might happen, right? Oh, and Jessica has something too. Scared to even think about seeing my family. Can't handle it. Protect yourself. There are definitely tears happening, but yes, lighter feeling after TAT. Exactly. No one's telling you you have to talk to your family. Nobody's saying any of that. All we're saying is, when you're feeling it, do something about it. So, okay, let's answer Dina's question, which was, you're in the middle of it, and you can't think about anything except how angry or hurt or frustrated you are. So it starts with realizing that there are going to be times when you're triggered. So you need to set up an environment that reminds you when you're triggered, you need to calm yourself down. So you have to set up an environment that reminds you when you're triggered, calm yourself down. When you're triggered, calm yourself down. When you're triggered, calm yourself down. So an environment that reminds you to do that. So when you're triggered, you remember to calm yourself down. It's a training, but you have to have that little bit of forethought. You have to know what's happening, that you might get triggered, and then start creating environments that help keep you from being triggered in the first place. Like, I've got my lights and my fire. All these things make me feel good. And because they make me feel good, I'm less likely to get triggered. I'll feel more centered and more balanced. But if you do end up getting triggered because you're in the middle of a fight, you're in the middle of someone yelling at you, you're in the middle of someone accusing you and pointing at you, you're in the middle of somebody slamming the doors, and you are frozen. Keep doing the tools that you've reminded yourself and taught yourself you're supposed to do. Have faith in the tools. Keep doing them and keep doing them and keep doing them and keep doing them until you feel better. And if you're in a position where you're not allowed to, where you're cornered, you set a strong boundary for yourself and say, if I ever feel cornered, I will respect and love myself to get in the car, drive away until I can calm myself down, not answer any texts or any phone calls. Give myself the respect to have space when I'm triggered. And then come back and deal with whatever you want to deal with. We get trapped in the idea that we're helpless. And because in our mind, we were, and at a time we were, when these traumas originally happened, yes, we were helpless. We were small. There wasn't anything we could do. But we're not helpless anymore. And sometimes these changes end up with some big drama because you start to protect yourself. When you do this on the front end, like this week, you start to have more confidence and you start to have more balance, which means that you start to be more emotionally authentic because you've got more confidence, because you've got less stress in your system, because you're feeling stronger, you're feeling more focused, which means that you're going to be more authentic. Your authentic emotions are going to come out, and sometimes they're going to come out in a very direct way. And the other person probably needs to learn that lesson. And even if you completely traumatize your dog, or completely traumatize the person in your life, if you help them process through it, if you teach them how to process through it, it's not going to be lifelong trauma. You're not going to hurt them for forever. Now, what if you're scared of what they'll do? I totally get that. If you're scared of what's going to happen, then you still need to keep doing all of your evening or daily, havening and TAT points until you feel strong and confident enough. You don't have to talk to your family until you feel confident and strong enough. You don't have to stand up for yourself and speak up for yourself until you're ready to. And then what happens is it just sort of explodes from you. It just sort of comes out because the walls are thinner and thinner and thinner, and that emotion is stronger and stronger. It's always been back there. It's waiting to be expressed. It's waiting to be validated. It's waiting to be loved and come out into the world, and it can come out. So you may have some emotional expressions, tears, anger, banging pots and pans, needing to go exercise, to deal with all of this emotion that's coming up. But just treat it kindly. And you'll find out that when you become more authentic, people respect you better. And when people respect you better, it gives you more space to get your needs met. So you have to set those boundaries for yourself about what you're willing to experience, what you're not willing to experience, and trust that. You will know when anything is the right time. There should be no question. You should not be deciding if something is the right time. Instead, you recognize that the right time is going to come. You prepare for yourself for when the right time is going to come. And then when the right time comes, you just spring. It just happens. It's like a trap was tripped. Suddenly you're there. So don't worry about doing these things that you'll have to do them now or force yourself to do anything you don't want to do. All we're doing is clearing the energy behind it. And when you clear the emotion that's behind it, which could be generations ago, you don't know where it came from. When you clear the energy behind it, yes, you become more assertive and you speak from your heart. Doreen, that was perfectly stated. When we do this stuff, you become more assertive and you speak from your heart. And if you think that doesn't change your family dynamics, you haven't experienced it yet. And it does change them. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but it changes for the better. And it doesn't always have to be assertive as in pushing somebody else around. It can be assertive as in confidence. And speaking from your heart doesn't have to be pouring out all the anger and hurt and frustration that you felt for how many decades. And, that doesn't have to be speaking from your heart. Speaking from your heart can be saying, you know what, I really love you. That's speaking from your heart too. So that's what happens when you get this stuff off your system. That's what we're doing today. I know. Now you know why I get so excited about it. Why? And it's magnified, and the effect is magnified when we do it as a group. We've got 7 women on right now, and more will be watching it. And we've got 160 women in the challenge. We are magnifying each other's energies. We're supporting each other. We're being part of a community where it's creating an even bigger impact on the magnetic field of the earth. So we're changing the whole world by doing this today. And it doesn't have to be suddenly you get over your fear of spiders. It's just recognizing that you have a fear of spiders and say, oh my God, I'm so scared of spiders. And you do it until you calm down. And then you see if you're maybe a little bit less scared of spiders. And then the next time the spider triggers, you go, oh, I'm so scared of spiders. But it's less, and then it's less. And then it just becomes a whisper, and then it's just gone. And then spiders become your best friend and one of the coolest insects on the planet, because they really seriously are. So yes, share, invite more to share here with us, because by magnifying all of the stuff that we're doing, it literally physically affects the whole planet and how everybody responds to everything. And it just starts by recognizing when you're hurting and loving yourself. in a way that's compassionate and kind. All right. So we're going to have Dr. Love in 16 minutes. He's fun and a different person. And because he's so different, he's going to have a whole different perspective on it. Sometimes with Dr. Love, you just got to sit back and enjoy the ride. Just listen to what he has to say. And if anything comes up, clear it. Anything comes up, clear it. He's a wonderful man. He's such a generous, kind man. And he has ADD, ADHD. He lives an interesting life. He lives his own life. So you just sort of let his coolness just sort of wash over you. And if any judgment comes up, any negativity, I know I had a few when I first met him. If anything comes up, just clear it and thank him for being someone who brought it to the surface so you can finally get it off of your system and be less stressed and be more integrated. Okay? So I'll see you in 15 minutes with Dr. Love.